Hello everyone, Minute Plus Meditation here, Monday, January the 15th. You know, we're only 1 month away from Lent. It's an early Lent this year. It starts actually on Valentine's Day, Saint Valentine's Day, February the 14th. Okay, so 1 Samuel. Okay, so this is, it's not really the beginning, but because it preceded this, but it's kind of the beginning of the end for Saul. Samuel said to Saul, "Stop, all right? I will tell you what the Lord said to me last night." Okay, he says, "Speak." So I'm just going to kind of cut through the reading. Why did you swoop down on the spoil and do what was evil in the sight of the Lord? So he didn't do what God wanted him to do. And then Saul begins to, justify himself. I can just hear his tone of voice. "What do you mean I did everything I was supposed to do?" You can just hear his tone of voice. Saul said to Samuel, "I have obeyed the voice of the Lord. I have gone out on mission on which the Lord sent me." And then Saul basically says something that's so important for us to remember. And Samuel says this back to Saul, "Has the Lord as great a delight in burnt offering and sacrifices as in obeying the voice of the Lord?" Doesn't it all boil down to that? Obedience is better than sacrifice. Surely to obey is better than sacrifice, and to heed than the fat of rams. For rebellion is no less a sin than divination, and stubbornness is like iniquity and idolatry. Because you have rejected the word of the Lord, he has also rejected you from being king. This is the end. God doesn't take his word back. And Saul never really gets over this. I mean, he was kind of a whiner, complained. He was a coward in many ways. He didn't really live up. God chose him for this, so he had all the graces necessary to fulfill this mandate. But he didn't open himself up to this. There comes a point, in all vocations where we have to be all in. And we can't say, "Well, I don't have the grace, to be a saint." Yes, you do, actually. Yes, I do. If we don't become a saint, it's because we failed. It's not because God somehow came up short. No, it's because you and I came up short. We have to blame ourselves, take responsibility for our own actions. Saul never does. And maybe it would have been changed, I don't know, a different outcome if he had said, "I have sinned against the Lord." But he doesn't do that. He just justifies himself. He won't listen to Samuel. And this is really hard on Samuel. Samuel put a lot of, we would say a lot of investment in Saul. And it just doesn't pay off. Saul is a huge disappointment, and his kingdom will be transferred to David. And Saul will never really get over this. So again, he doesn't accept the bitterness, that comes from refusal. If he had accepted this, he wouldn't have been so bitter. He would have been humble, but he won't accept it in humility. So as we'll read on, he's going to try and kill David almost to the end of his life. Okay, so you and I, we need to be very humble and do what God asks us to do. And, stop whining and complaining about, it's God's fault, it's everybody's fault. No, do what God wants us to do. And what does God want me to do? Well, follow the commandments. Right? That's a good starter. Okay, over to the gospel. Mark chapter 2. John's disciples and the Pharisees were fasting. People came to Jesus. "Why do John's disciples and the disciples of the Pharisees fast, but your disciples do not fast?" Basically, he's saying, because I'm God, and they shouldn't be fasting when the bridegroom is here. This is the wedding feast, and you wouldn't dare think of fasting if the bridegroom is here. So he's stating right here his divinity, but he also makes it clear that the day will come and the bridegroom is taken from them, and then they will fast on that day. And they did fast. These men were great penitents, great ascetics each in their own way. Probably James stands out amongst all of them. I can't remember if it's James the Lesser or James the Greater. I get them always mixed up. Anyways, they all became men they actually engaged in fasting, prayer, and almsgiving as best as they could, because they all lived a life of poverty. But almsgiving, they certainly gave of their time, and they gave of whatever gifts they had. We talk about time, talent, and treasure. Well, they didn't have much treasure, but they certainly had time, and they had talent. Whatever talents God granted to them, they reinvested back into God's people. So, and that's what you and I need to do. You and I are now called to engage in fasting, prayer, and almsgiving. So, do you fast? Don't wait for Lent. Lent is just a time to kind of focus on things. Don't wait for Lent. Do you practice fasting on every Friday of the year, but just not one day of the week? Right? We need to fast with our eyes every time we sit down in front of the television or the screens. We need to fast with our ears every time we get engaged in conversation. Gossip and maligning and character assassination, all that stuff. We need to fast from our gut, so that we curb sensual pleasures and a desire for comfort, inordinate desire for comfort. So we train ourselves to say, no, that's totally out for me because it's bad, and this is enough for me because I enjoy it, and I want to have more of it. But it's at some point it's not good for me. So let us really pray that the Lord helps us. The bridegroom is with us. Jesus Christ is with us in the Blessed Sacrament over there in the tabernacle. But we are called to engage in prayer, fast, and almsgiving, every single one of us. God bless you.